August 18th, 2025. Welcome to This Week in Waukesha, the podcast series, podcast number 2 tonight. This is a civic media production in cooperation with um, 540 AM, WAUK, and WRJN. And I'm your host, Don Brown, Downtown Donnie Brown, coming to you from the office of former Alderman Don Paul Brown here in the Work Hub studios. And I'm joined again by my very talented young producer, the mighty Max Martinson. And we're back with Jim Makin, uh, union representative emeritus with the New York Carpenters Union District Council. And we're, as part of Labor Day observances, since it's just a couple weeks away, Jim has agreed to join us and shared some really interesting insights about his career and what being a union has meant for him and his family and for many of his brothers and sisters in the union, in the Carpenters Union, and what it could mean for us here in Wisconsin, which is has a union tradition. And while union membership still is, I guess you could say, at an all-time low, that popularity is back on the rise in light of inflated executive salaries, in light of young people making more spending decisions on their values more than any other generation, and also the same in pursuing careers, having benefits that are important to them and opportunities to retire at a decent enough age. You can enjoy your retirement while you're still young, and also building better products for sure, making better buildings, and so, Jim, I appreciate sharing. Before we jump into it, I just want to share some local news too. Um, the hearing was set on August 15th um, for Norm Bruce, the longtime owner of Martha Merrill's Books in downtown Waukesha. The hearing was in front of the City of Waukesha's Administrative Review Appeals Board, and it was to discuss the revocation of Bruce's special event and street closing permit, which he has used to have live music outside the bookstore on Friday nights in the summer. And this has been kind of a grudge match, or a bitter one, between the Bruces and the rest of the downtown business owners, the ones that make up the Downtown Business Association. I know that more than a year ago, Norm, I believe, if I was correct, he was asked to step down as president of the Downtown Business Association and as um, the person in charge of the weekly farmers markets, and it's caused some battles that have now spilled into the government, if you will. And we hope to have Norm on to talk about it, as well as maybe someone from the DBA to talk about uh, this situation involving Friday Night Live. I know when he was a part of Friday Night Live, Norm used to have some great live entertainment right outside the store, usually in the form of like country music, like great banjo music. And I'm not a country guy, but I can certainly appreciate the caliber of the bands that he had. And so when he left Friday Night Live, yeah, I think he was trying to go rogue and start his own live music thing, his own special like event within the event. And uh, again, there's some headbutting going on, but we look forward to learning more about that, and hopefully we can talk about it on future podcasts. But getting back on topic here with my good friend all the way from Queens, New York, one of my hometown heroes, Jim Makin, and so Jim, yeah, before we broke up in the first podcast, we were talking about a lot of unions have scholarship funds. There's a local I'm familiar with here that they were negotiating for a scholarship fund, even though the rank and file were paying for it. It was coming out of the member dues. You needed the management's approval in the contract negotiations. That's law, and they didn't sign off on it, even though they didn't have to spend a nickel on it. And the thing was, is that their rationale is that, well, we don't want to lose workers to people going to college.
Yeah.
But they're not looking at, like, don't you think that's a good hook for recruiting talented, like, skilled workers?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think what they said is that they don't want to pay because they just don't want to pay. That's how it always worked with these scholarship funds.
Yeah.
They don't want to start something that's going to be a legacy, and we support ours through membership. You know what I mean? We do outings. Like I said, what happens is a union will go to one outing for scholarship funds, and they kind of all get together and pool the funds.
Sure.
But as a matter of training, I think one of the things that gets missed in a union is that they provide training.
Yes.
Good union, at least the carpenters union, will have training centers. You go through an apprenticeship, so you're not just thrown out in the field and learn it. You're on your own, sink or swim. You'll be able to go to classes and learn what you need to do, and then you'll be working with experienced people.
Yeah.
That's something that it's kind of like the college experience. It's 4
Yeah.
years, and at the end of the fourth
Minus the
year,
factual work experience.
yeah, and it just makes a huge difference. I think from how I learned by going, and I started construction sweeping, but I would watch the guys. I would sweep around them and see how they did it.
Yeah.
And then when somebody didn't show up one day, I was able to slide in and start hanging drywall or framing things. But like that was all on me. And when you join a union, you're going to start taking classes. They want highly educated people. They want people with certificates.
Right.
That's the point. It makes you a better tradesman. It makes you a better person. I think the scholarship fund. I think these guys kind of see it as maybe they see it as they're going to go be the doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, and not the worker. And like I said, I think that's something that started when we were younger too. You know what I mean? If you went into the trade, people were kind of like, "Oh, trades." Didn't you want to be, one of the college graduate people? And I think that's changing though. I think it deserves to change.
Now it's like with my, because I have kids. Well, your kids are around the same age. I don't ask their friends like where they're going to college. I say, "What are you doing after high school?" And a lot of them are going into the trades and making a lot more money at age 18 than I ever did.
Without a doubt. And that's
legitimate
I kick
businesses
myself.
too. I
kick myself. I call it my lost decade. But you have to learn, and everybody learns that at the
it was lost for me too in a lot of ways, and not a lot of good ways. And like for you were building a craft. You were improving yourself professionally, and you were making things that you could tell your friends, your kids that I helped build that.
Oh, yeah. That's probably the funnest part of a carpenter's drive-by. They hate it. They all collectively groan. Oh, I did that. I was at that mall. See that? Or a little story about something that went on. I did a lot of the work at JFK, so those airports I know them, by heart. Walk through them, and those projects all run 2-3 years. You know what I mean? They're nice projects to get on, and you develop a camaraderie, and you actually develop a appreciation of the building. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and just to bookend it, like Terminal 1, that was in 1997. I started on that job.
Wow.
They're planning on tearing it down next year to build a new terminal.
Are you gonna go out there and pick it and it shouldn't be historic preservation by now?
Yeah, you would hope, but no, they're gonna raise it and start over, and that's kind of like
maybe they'll give you a piece of it, like a piece of drywall or something.
It would be fun. It's funny. That's kind of thing when you get older, you kind of accept you're part of a wave, and when your wave goes by, another wave comes, and you can't really be jealous of it.
Especially in New York City, like that city's had so many facelifts.
It is, and this is something I've noticed over the summer. I was fortunate enough to go over to Normandy, and in France, we did a tour of the beaches, Omaha Beach and Utah Beach, and you go into the towns, and they look almost exactly the same as they did when they were built, 1,000 years ago.
Okay.
And I think the difference there is they keep things. They don't like raise buildings. They just reuse, they repurpose them.
Sure.
I think America is more of the consumer society where we, knock it down, put a brand spanking new pretty one up, And,
unfortunately.
Yeah, and each has its plus or minuses, but in the end, you lose that little piece of history, where you say, "Hey, my great grandfather built this," or something like that. So.
Well, you talk about you talk about that pride in that work, but going back to the training, a significant percentage of that training is also safety training. So you minimize injuries or deaths or any of those things that are costly to an employer, a developer, whoever's on the other end of the hook.
Exactly.
But more importantly, you're doing it right the first time and not having to go back there in 5 years and
100%. A lot of the savings,
drug testing, right?
Yeah, a lot of savings contractors get is by ignoring safety, because you don't really need safety until you do. You know what I mean? So you can get away with it for so long, and save a lot of money until you get that death. And then what happens is a lot of these companies fold on a life. There's a couple contractors by me, big concrete contractors that went along and were killing everybody. And then unfortunately they killed, one of their workers, and then the whole thing falls apart. And, no one expects to go to work and not return. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be something that, is to worry about. And so safety is a huge, that's the first classes you take. You get an OSHA 10 card, you get an OSHA 40 card. I've done a lot of safety training. I still do it, actually. I still
Right, you're telling me, yeah.
Because I feel it's important to know, and I'll still go by a site and see something and talk to the workers, or I'll stop in and talk to the GC, because a lot of general contractors don't know, and don't, not that they don't even care, but they just want the project done, so they put on blinders.
You can cut corners, yeah.
Yeah, they cut corners, but I've always found, as an organizer, if I went on a site and pointed something out, to a GC, it would get fixed. Not so much a contractor; they kind of threw you off, but the GC would fix it because they want it done right. They realize how much it costs, and so I'm fortunate that a human life is only based on cost and not on the value of the life. But that's business in this world,
right? But that leads to that bigger topic. I mean, now that you're retired, and where do you see organized labor heading, knowing that there is a shift in popularity in favor of unions?
Well, I hope that we start going back towards a larger percentage of the market, at least a 50% share. Because I think you learn all these adages. You either at the table or on the menu. Those are the things that they teach you. So you want to be at the table for negotiating. You get to a certain part. So hopefully we can get that far. I think it's more also educating people, and it's a big failure to educate the youth on just basic labor. I mean, you go back down into the 1800s, people were dying to get, literally, bosses were hiring people to kill them, so they would form a union. There was very brave people back then. You go back to the railroad barons, and you go back to the time when everything was under one or two guys. They were ruthless.
Yeah.
And people's memory of pain fades. You know what I mean? And I hope we can go around it before we have more painful memories. It's you don't want to be a number. I mean, in the 50s and 60s, America was an amazing, wonderful place. You got a job somewhere, you had a pension, you got a future. And I think that's slowly eroded. We need to get back to where we were before.
Yes.
And unions seem to be, the best bargaining chip, pretty much the only bargaining chip we have.
Sure. What has been like some of the proudest moments in your career as a union carpenter and as a representative?
I'll tell you, as a rep, especially when I was helping non-union guys. You'll get some guy and he'll help you out. He's able to get into the union. He'll come up to you 5 or 6 years later out of the blue and tap you on the shoulder and be like, "Man, I just want to thank you. I got a wife, I got a kid, I got a future." That alone is worth all the things that go wrong. And just it's funny. I speaking about legacy, and I used to post on Facebook all the time. I had if you ever wanted to, if your listeners wanted, just type in area standards on Facebook.
Okay.
And it'll pop up, and it's pretty much. I used to post when I went somewhere and put up a rat, or I had a rally. I would post it on that, and so you can get a snapshot of what it's like to be in the labor movement.
Sure.
So I mean, it's I left it there as a legacy, kind of. I didn't pass it on to anyone. I said, "This is what I did." I started in 2013. I kept that all the way up until probably until the end. But it just gives people an idea of what you got to do and the things you face. Because it's my first day as an organizer. I had to go in front of Salvation Army and put up a rat. And I was shaking because I was like, in front of, I'm thinking, Salvation Army? Like, what are you talking about? And the guy pulled up from Salvation Army that was like the head general.
Yeah.
So angry. He's like, "Yo, remove this rat right." Sparked something in me that stayed alive for the whole time. Like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? You're selling $100 million buildings and you're refusing to pay the workers. You lost your way.
Yeah.
And it's interesting.
What's that term you said? Rat? What does that mean?
So basically, most of social justice is you need to get people to notice. People really just walk around and don't pretend.
Yeah.
So we had, believe it or not, an inflatable. I think it was a 12-foot rat, sometimes a 16-foot rat.
Wow.
And I would go into Manhattan, stop my truck, unload the rat, and blow it up in front of a business so that people would notice. And I would hand out flyers to say this is the issue.
Yeah.
And they would come out and they would have a hissy fit. You can't do this, and you got to know the law. You have a right to protest. Sidewalks in public place. As long as I was allowing egress, I could do it. And I had that conversation so many times. You know what I mean? The police come and
any punches being traded ever?
What's that?
Do you ever have to trade punches with any of these
guys?
No.
So that's why it never comes to that, because you learn that way is not the right way. I mean, right. You don't win by violence. You just say, why are you hiding this? And most people have a conscience, and they won't confront you because they realize what they're doing. And, right. And sometimes you do get, that was the best thing. You get the most change from somebody who said, oh, wait a minute, maybe I can fix this.
Right.
You know what I mean? And those are your victories, and it just, I did it for so long. I guess if you want to, just take a gander, just type in areas. I think it's 2 words, area standards, and then say, going to pop up. Yeah. It's you can scroll through. I had and we had all sorts of things. I've had partners arrested. I've had a lot of times confrontations. You learn to de-escalate things. You learn to not take it personal and say, listen, I'm here for a purpose. I'm not here to I'm here to let people know. Right. And, this is the way it works. So, I'd be happy when a cop came, because everybody would actually stop and look.
Right. Yeah.
And then, then all of a sudden the guy in the business is like, oh, geez, do I want this? Do I want this? Because everybody's got something they want to hide. You know what I mean? And it's interesting. I mean, it's a very hybrid job. And I was glad I had it.
Well, the police were a union, right, in New York City?
Yeah.
So
and
they probably knew you well enough that they were always
there's so many laws in place now to make sure that the unions can't win, that it gets tricky. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Years ago it's probably a lot more different, a lot easier. But now basically they stop by and they just make sure you obey the law and move on. So but it's enough, and it gets people to think, and that's really what I'm trying to do, to get people to think, because you get into life, into that grind, you stop thinking about those things like that. In that sense.
So in the final couple of minutes we have here, what is it you'd like listeners to know, especially the younger listeners, about organized labor that you'd want them to kind of take another look or pause and?
Well, I guess I'm going to say is the thing I said to every workers: where do you see yourself in 10 years and 15 years? I mean, do you have a job that's going to give you the basic needs? And if not, how are you going to address it? And that's really going to be up to each individual person. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And, the trades are one way. And also, you're listening to a union organizer. You have a right to listen to anybody at work. If somebody talks to you, nobody should come up to you and say, you can't talk like that at work. You know what I mean? Yeah. If that happens, that should be ringing bells all over. I think, keeping an open mind and just realize that, everybody has a value. Everything you do as a worker is valuable. I forget, and I wish I remember the name of the person who said it. The biggest power I have is putting my hands in my pocket, because my boss won't be able, will get nothing done. The workers don't do anything and nothing happens, and that's at the minimum level. Some people overload themselves to crazy. So.
Yeah, that's true. Jim Makin, retired representative of the New York Carpenters Union District Council, and before that worked as a carpenter at the local 45. Thanks so much for joining us, for sharing your story about your work as a union carpenter and a union representative, and for also shedding some new light too on people on organized labor and how people should be looking at it through a different lens, especially in light of what's going on today with executive salaries and just with how squeezed we are. You need two-income families. There's no more stay-at-home parents, unless they're freelancing or unless they're working from home. But for the most part, we could see a renaissance in organized labor that could be good for business and good for the economy. So,
Hopefully so. Hopefully so.
yeah, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to This Week in Waukesha. And if you have a story, give us a shout. Message me on Facebook or on LinkedIn. And we want to hear your story. It's about Waukesha, about something that's near and dear to Waukesha, which Waukesha, the great city of industry. Labor is important to us. And so I'm really glad to have one of my best friends from home, a longtime New Yorker, big Appler, I guess we'd say it.
Yeah.
Again, joining us tonight. So, Jim, all the best. Again, happy Labor Day coming up, and all the best for the end of your summer and a very fun fall. And if the spirit moves you since you're retired, come out to Waukesha, come see a
Yeah. I'm
game.
planning the other half has to retire when she's ready. I'm going to do the tour. We'll do the national tour, the gym tour. I'll stop by for a week.
Tell you, yeah, you got to come by here. And depending on the time of year, there could be a Brewers game in it for you, or a Packer game, or just a great day by one of our wonderful lakes here. So much to do. Milwaukee is, and Max, I think would agree, is the capital of summer. There's so many great things to do here in the summer, and things that are pretty affordable or free. So we hope to have you here.
Sounds good. Thanks, Don. Thank you, man.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. Please remember, safety is everyone's responsibility. Good mental health is everybody's right. Go to Mila Mahagaler and see ya.